All right, YouTube. So, I want to talk about the recent feud between Ron DeSantis and Alexandria Ocasio Cortez, and kind of some really interesting things that arose from Ron DeSantis talking about it on Fox News with Bill Hemmer. Now, the really interesting thing about this, though, is that Ron DeSantis was going after Ocasio Cortez because of her views on Israel. And then Hemmer was asking DeSantis, the congressman from Florida, he was asking, do you think this is a message that they could run on, anti-Israel sentiment? And then he said, no, because I think the majority of America is very pro-Israel, and this is where this is the reason why I'm not necessarily, I'm a fan of Ocasio-Cortez, but I'm kind of under the impression that a move that was very anti-Zionist in nature would probably be very popular. I just don't see the left doing that, though, because I think if they're still going to go after Russia, then they still haven't gotten past the fact that, obviously Israel is our greatest threat. They're the ones who spy on us the most, next to the Chinese, that is. But both those countries tend to do a lot of spying on the United States. And interesting fact, so what they do is one of the interesting relationships between the intelligence agencies between two countries. So essentially, you'll get the United States spying on Chinese citizens. Or no, vice versa. So Chinese citizens, or the Chinese government rather, spying on American citizens. Then they basically sell that information back to the United States for profit, because it's essentially their way of getting data on us without a warrant. It's a little loophole. And they do the same thing too. Like Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook, they essentially sell Americans' data to foreign bodies like China, unfortunately. But going back to Ocasio-Cortez, because if she's really going to go and run on this message, then she needs to go all in, because there certainly is an element of the country that is very sick of the Zionist ways and the Jewish subversion of American culture. I mean, it's an actual thing, and sometimes people are afraid to talk about it, unfortunately. And then one of the guys the most popular YouTube commentator that's been talking about this, or at least used to talk about it in the past before he got a larger audience, was Styx. Styx did a lot of good work with talking about the Holocaust, and also talking about, they're basically Jewish subversion of American culture, which there totally is. They talk about Israel being our closest cultural ally. Well, I think that's bullshit. I think Mexico definitely has in California especially, Mexico has had a huge influence on California. But yeah, I think if she's going to run on this message, then she needs to go all in. But the cognitive dissonance, I guess, that comes in is like, okay, well, even if you were to get behind that message, you'd probably still look at her economic plan to be like very foolish, because essentially what she's saying is like, well, yeah, we're going to tax the rich, but she's not really denying the fact that people, like working class people, are still going to have to pay pretty steep taxes. I guarantee you your taxes are going to go up, if you're going to vote for the Democrats. That's just going to happen, because they keep preaching this message like they're the pro-establishment party, the deep state party. They're essentially saying like, vote for us because, we're going to take your tax dollars and spend it very wisely. We're going to give free healthcare to everybody. But they're still pretty, they're silent on the question when you go, well, how about this? What if you stop taxing us altogether and let us spend that money on our own healthcare? And sometimes, believe it or not, sometimes people are actually, they have the audacity to say like, oh, well, you don't know how to spend your money. You don't know how to save your money, so you need the government to do it for you, right? Like, that's the whole logic behind the 401k, I guess, or Social Security or whatever. It's bullshit. I mean, FDR, like, looking back at it, was a really bad president. He got us involved in a very, very big war that was unnecessary. And he was definitely complicit in overseeing the fact that Pearl Harbor was probably, projected, like they knew it was going to happen. They didn't do anything about it. It was essentially, I wouldn't even call it a false flag, but I would probably say it's just as bad. It's essentially casus belli. It's what got us into the war in the first place. So FDR, I mean, look, with the Social Security and everything, it's just a bad message for the Democrats to run on. And this, like I said, this is a very interesting interaction between the two people. Desantis, the guy who I tend to agree with on most issues except for this one, and then also Ocasio Cortez, the complete opposite. It's like, yeah, I agree with you on this thing. Like, Israel is definitely a bad country, but I think the way she poses it is almost like, kind of like looking at it like very black and white. So she's saying like, oh, the Israeli government is essentially, they're occupying the state of Palestine. Well, I think there should be a state of Palestine, obviously. But at the same time, it's like, that's none of our business. We should not be getting involved with that. That would seem like something like an Iraq situation all over again. Excuse me, all over again. It just wouldn't be a very smart thing to get involved with. And that's the whole point. Like, we can't get involved with these people no matter what. Like, we can't get involved with the Palestinians, and we cannot get involved with the Israelis. It's that simple. So, yeah, it's really interesting. I really want to see where this goes because, like I said, if she decides to go, if she decides to go full Palestine, I guess, like, she's probably gonna definitely wrangle some support from the human rights crowd, like Abby Martin and the such, and the type, I guess. But yeah, it's gonna be interesting, and she's essentially the face of the Democratic Party. So we're living in amazing time, folks. It's times, folks. It's I think it's the best timeline, honestly, and yeah, just a lot of memes. Just a lot of memes. That was a pretty good take. I'm going to end on that. Peace.